Hey everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. This is the part 2 of the pathogen series, and today I'm just going to talk a little bit about bacteria. The most notable difference between bacterial infections and viral infections is with bacterial infections you can actually make use of antibiotics. And I mentioned that before in the viral vid, just thought I would repeat it because, well, partially because that BitChute vid's still not processed, I don't think. Anyway, but really the better comparison actually is not between bacteria and viruses. They are very different. The better comparison would be between bacterial cells and animal cells because they're very similar. I mean, bacteria, as I've mentioned before, are alive. That's a huge distinction there between them and viruses. A bacteria is comprised of a single cell, very similar to an animal cell. The biggest difference is if you look at a bacterial cell, you'll notice that it doesn't have a proper nucleus. Sometimes they'll have something on par, like a nucleoid, but they don't have a proper nucleus. They don't have the same organelles. In fact, they usually don't have any. They don't have ribosomes. They don't have mitochondria. I don't think they have lysosomes either. So they're just structurally similar, but a lot of the inner workings are different. The cell wall is not made out of what are our cell walls made out of? A lipid bilayer, a phospholipid bilayer. Our walls are made out of phospholipid bilayer, but a bacterial cell is actually made out of a glycoprotein called murine. So that's just another small distinction. I know that's not super important with regard to bacteria as a pathogen, but it's just worth talking about because it's easy to confuse single-celled animal cells with bacteria because bacterial cells are always found solitary. They're their own organism, but a lot of people have the misconception that there are no single-celled animals in the form of parasites, and that's going to be the third vid, and I'm just sort of making a little prelude to that there are single-celled animal organisms. They are out there. One thing also to mention, because a lot of people have a strong aversion. I'm a bit of a germaphobe, to be fair. A strong aversion to bacteria in all their forms, when that's really not a good thing. The vast majority of bacteria are not harmful. Many of them are beneficial and actually live in our bodies, and we actually have more cell by cell. They're much smaller than animal cells, but cell by cell, we're more bacteria than human even. So it's very important for health, and it's just now becoming sort of a cutting-edge research. Some people were even claiming, and I'm not really sure if this is truly the case, but I'm more inclined to agree with them than disagree, that the future of medical treatment is not a question of chemical substances, but rather bacterial ratios. Like, if someone has a certain problem, the solution is more likely to be bacterial rather than just a solid chemical in the form of a regular drug. It would be more like something that's been impregnated with certain ratios of bacterial species. The vast majority of bacteria are not harmful, and most of them that you find out in nature are not pathogens. In fact, most bacteria are actually autotrophs, so they actually produce their own food the way that plants do, rather than getting it from different resources. So then you might be asking, well, why do bacterial infections occur? That's for this tiny minority of bacterial species that are heterotrophic, that do colonize environments rich in resources, and an animal's body, a human included, is just very rich in resources. It's like a grain silo for a bacterium, if that's the kind of thing that they want to consume. So that's ultimately how they invade our bodies. They're much more fragile than viruses. They don't mutate as quickly as viruses. They're more likely to be susceptible to antibiotics. So these are all positive things. So then why are bacteria dangerous? The biggest issue, in addition to just knowing what to treat a bacterial or a viral infection with, which is one of the big reasons why I'm making this vid actually, is more about the way to go about dealing with it, is, antibiotics are better. And when you get antibiotics, the whole point of them is to get a proper dose from a physician who knows what kind of bacterial infection will respond best to a certain drug, which is usually fungus derived, and to take the entire dose. That's another big one. People do three big terrible things with antibiotics. One, they'll get it for a viral infection. Two, if they have a bacterial infection, they'll take it till they feel better, and then they'll stop. While you're doing is making antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which is a serious issue. That's one of the reasons why I'm also talking about it. And three, this is the other weird one they'll flush the antibiotics. Again, now you're making antibiotic-resistant bacteria in other places, not just in your own body. When this is what you're supposed to do. One, make sure you have a bacterial infection. Then when you get your antibiotics, you finish them. After you do that, eat some probiotic stuff to get that ratio of gut bacteria back in order. And 3 or 4, I guess, this is the big one. Let's say hypothetically you can't finish. I don't know what reason there would be. I can't think of a reason, but I'm sure there is one. Do not flush your antibiotics. Throw them in the garbage. That's the best place to put them, in the garbage. Don't flush them. What you're going to do is you're going to expose sewer bacteria to antibiotics, which is going to kill a proportion of the sewer bacteria, which are not harming anyone right now because they're just doing their job in the sewer, and you're going to make a certain percentage of them antibiotic resistant. And then if someone gets exposed to that, then you're basically sowing the seeds for a plague. So yeah, those are just that's my advice regarding antibiotics and how to go about using them. And of course, you don't always need something like that for a bacterial infection, but if you take it properly and you finish the dose, you're not really causing a lot of harm. Really, the only harm you're causing is you're damaging your gut biome a little bit, and you can bounce back from that. Sulfa drugs, of course, are like the nuclear weapon for bacteria. They kill everything, but then they really screw up a person's gut biome, and that's really if you have a dangerous infection or you're immune compromised, or the actual infection itself is so resistant to normal antibiotics that you really don't have much of a choice in the matter, because there's a big cost benefit ratio when it comes to sulfa drugs. The cost is pretty high in terms of how it affects your physiology, in terms of the benefit, unless you really, really need it. I'm trying to think of what all else. One interesting thing, this is just me talking about bacteria more biologically. I just think it's also something to talk about. They reproduce through fission, which is really similar to mitosis in our animal cells, but they also reproduce through transposition. Why do I feel like that's not the right word? Oh well. What they do is they exchange DNA, and I actually talk about that in my Origins of Sex video, which is one of the first videos I did on BitChute, and it's a BitChute exclusive, so check it out if you want. I knew that if I put it anywhere else, the algorithm would get it, because it's a little more risque of a topic. But let's see, that I think covers bacteria. So like, share, subscribe, and keep asking questions. Next time we're going to be talking about parasites. Bye.